So I wanted to put together something a little bit different for this week's bread series. What I have here is a homemade bread loaf, which consisted of some honey, cinnamon, and apples. Let me walk you through it. You want to start with a warm cup of milk. Add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 tablespoon of yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and a ton of honey. Added in 3 to 4 tablespoons. Wasn't quite measuring, but I just added in a ton. And then stirred it up, set that aside to combine. That way the yeast can become active. Now in a separate bowl, you want to put together 3 cups of all-purpose flour that I have here, as well as 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix that slightly to combine, and then you want to add in your yeasty, frothy mixture here, and then combine that using a spatula until a rough dough ball gets formed. After that, you really want to use your hands to actually form the dough ball and get that flour well incorporated into the mix. The best way to do that is using a wet hand, so I like to dip my fingers in a little bit of water and then continue to kind of pull and fold, stretch and fold the dough until I have a nice dough ball here. I covered it with a damp towel for 2 hours until it doubled in size. While that was proofing, I shredded up an apple here, just 1 apple. Then it was time to degas that dough. So once I hit that with a nice punch, I put it out onto a floured work surface and started stretching it out with my hands. You want to work the dough for about 10 minutes or so, just to really get that gluten formed, as well as just make sure the ball is nice and taut and has a nice kind of spring to it as well. So you really want to stretch it out with your hands here for about 10 minutes, and then I let it sit for 10 minutes just out to let the dough relax, because I do want to stretch it and mold it into a rectangle shape, because we're going to fill it with cinnamon and that apple. So you want to use a rolling pin here and stretch it out into the best type of rectangle that you can. And then once you have that rectangle, I brushed on a little bit of melted butter. It's only about a tablespoon or so of melted butter. That's going to let the cinnamon and the apple adhere to the dough. So once you spread on that melted butter, sprinkle on some cinnamon, just a few teaspoons, then you'll be good to go. Take that shredded apple, add that in as well, and then it's time to actually roll up the dough. So you just want to start on one corner and slowly roll the dough together until you make kind of a loaf shape. Ideally, you want the size of your bread loaf to actually fit your bread loaf pan, which is a heavily buttered pan. So make sure you heavily butter your pan as well. And you want to stick that ball of dough into the loaf pan and let that sit there for about 90 minutes out on your counter. It should proof very nice, having a second rise here where it's almost doubled in size. You're going to bake it at 350 until done, about 35 or so minutes, and check what comes out. You get this awesome sandwich looking bread loaf. It's going to be super moist, soft on the inside. I brushed it with a little bit of melted butter on top. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I did that as well. I let it cool on a wired rack for a few hours here, and then we are ready to eat. Again, this bread came out super nice, very soft, milky, sweet, had that apple flavor as well, which was nice. Can't go wrong. Everything's in the description. Like and subscribe for more.